Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The cold, distant edges of the Milky Way were a place where few ventured, where the vast silence of space reigned supreme. The region seemed unremarkable, a collection of stars scattered like dust in the cosmic winds. But hidden deep within this tranquil expanse, a secret lay buried: the Galactic Guard, a group of human soldiers sworn to protect the galaxy from unseen threats. They were the last line of defense, a mystery to most of the universe. Captain Ethan Steele stood in front of the main viewport on the command deck, his sharp eyes scanning the stars. He had been a soldier for most of his life, but never had he encountered a threat like the one that now loomed on the horizon. The Zurak Empire, a ruthless alien race, was planning something. He could feel it. And the whispers in the galaxy confirmed it. A soft hum filled the air as Dr. Mira Park, the squad's lead scientist, entered the room. "Captain, the scans of the outskirts are complete. We found something, a Zurak scout ship. It's small, but it confirms the rumors." Ethan turned to face her, his expression grave. "How close are they?" "Close enough. If a scout ship's here, the main fleet can't be far behind." Myra's voice was steady, but Ethan could see the tension in her eyes. This was no ordinary mission. Behind them, Lieutenant Marcus Vega, a hotshot pilot known for his daring moves in battle, leaned against the console. His grin, however, was absent today. "Guess we're not getting that vacation after all." "Not unless you count getting blown to pieces as a vacation," muttered Sergeant Alana Graves, the team's ground operative, her hands busy checking her weapon. She was always ready for a fight, but even she knew the odds weren't in their favor. Ethan stared out into the vastness. "We have to prepare for the worst. The Zurak won't come lightly. Their ships are bigger, their weapons more advanced. We'll be outnumbered." "We've been outnumbered before," Alana shot back. "This is different," Ethan said, his voice low. "The Zurak don't lose. They conquer. Entire star systems have fallen to them." Mira stepped forward, a spark of hope in her eyes. "We may have something that could help. I've been working on a new weapon, something that could level the playing field. I call it the Starlight Cannon. It's based on experimental Earth technology, massive energy output, enough to take out a Zurak flagship." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like my kind of gun." "It's dangerous," Mira warned. "We haven't tested it, and the energy required, it could destroy us if something goes wrong." Ethan's jaw tightened. "We might not have a choice. Start the preparations. I want that cannon ready by the time the Zurak fleet arrives." As the days passed, the Galactic Guard worked tirelessly to prepare. Their outpost, hidden within an asteroid field, was transformed into a fortress. Cloaked drones were deployed to monitor the surrounding space, and laser grids were activated, creating an invisible barrier around their location. Every moment was a race against time. Ethan spent most of his hours in the war room, poring over star maps and tactical data. He knew that when the Zurak arrived, they wouldn't stop until everything was ashes. On the bridge, Marcus ran simulations on his ship systems, pushing the limits of the engines. His ship, the Silver Hawk, was small and agile, perfect for hit-and-run tactics. But even with all his skills, taking on the Zurak fleet would be like trying to stop a tidal wave with a pebble. Down in the armory, Alana sharpened her blades, her mind focused on the coming battle. She had faced impossible odds before, but something about this mission gnawed at her. The Zurak weren't just soldiers, they were conquerors, built for war, relentless in their pursuit of victory. Mira, meanwhile, barely slept. The Starlight cannon was her masterpiece, but it was also her greatest gamble. She ran tests, recalibrated the energy systems, and double-checked the calculations. Everything had to be perfect. Failure wasn't an option, and then, the alarm sounded. "They're here," Ethan announced as the massive Zurak fleet appeared on the holographic display. Dozens of warships, each larger than the last, slowly advanced toward the galactic border. Marcus whistled low. "That's a lot of firepower." Ethan's hands tightened into fists. "Everyone to your stations. This is it." The battle began with a single pulse of light as the Zurak ships opened fire. Their energy beams tore through space, crashing against the Galactic Guard's shields. The outpost shuddered, but held. Marcus was already in the air, weaving through enemy fire in the Silver Hawk. His ship darted between the massive Zurak vessels, unleashing precise strikes that targeted weak points in their armor. He flew like a man possessed, each maneuver daring, each attack lethal. On the ground, Alana led a strike team to board one of the Zurak cruisers. The inside was a labyrinth of steel and flashing lights, Zurak soldiers pouring in from all sides. Alana fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, her blades flashing as she cut through enemy ranks. "Hold the line," she shouted, even as her team was pushed back. The Zurak were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. But Alana didn't retreat. She couldn't afford to. Back at the outpost, Ethan commanded from the bridge, his voice steady, issuing orders with precision. Every move was calculated, every strike coordinated. But the Zurak fleet was vast, and the battle was slipping out of their control. "Mira, we need that cannon now," Ethan said, his voice tight with urgency. "I'm almost ready," Mira responded, her hands flying over the controls. "Just a few more minutes." "We don't have a few more minutes," Ethan replied, watching as the Zurak fleet drew closer. Their flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons, was leading the charge. Marcus, still dodging fire in his ship, radioed in. "Cap, I don't think I can keep this up much longer. They're swarming us." "Do what you can, Marcus," Ethan replied. "We just need a little more time." And then, the unthinkable happened. A Zurak dreadnought broke through the defensive line, heading straight for the outpost. Its weapons charged, ready to obliterate everything in its path. Ethan's heart raced. "Mira, we're out of time." "I know." Mira shouted, her hands shaking as she activated the Starlight cannon. The entire outpost hummed with energy, the power surging through the weapon's core. Firing in 3, 2, 1, a blinding beam of light shot from the cannon, tearing through space. It slammed into the Zurak dreadnought, piercing its armor and detonating its core. The explosion lit up the stars, the shockwave knocking back nearby ships. Cheers erupted from the crew, but the battle wasn't over yet. The Zurak flagship still loomed, its weapons trained on the outpost. Ethan clenched his fists. "Prepare for another shot." But before they could fire, the flagship launched a massive barrage of energy blasts, too many to intercept. The outpost's shields flickered, struggling to hold. "We can't take another hit like that," Marcus said, his voice grim. Ethan's mind raced. They needed to take out the flagship, but their defenses were on the verge of collapse. "We're going to have to do this the hard way," Ethan said. "Marcus, get ready for a suicide run." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Marcus's voice crackled through. "Roger that." The Silver Hawk broke formation, speeding toward the Zurak flagship. The enemy ship unleashed a torrent of fire, but Marcus flew with unmatched skill, dodging and weaving through the blasts. His target, the ship's command bridge, back at the outpost, Mira worked frantically to recharge the Starlight cannon for one final shot. Sweat dripped down her brow as she rerouted power from non-essential systems, praying the weapon would fire in time. On the ground, Alana and her team continued to fight against impossible odds. The Zurak cruiser was a bloodbath, but she pushed forward, her blade cutting through the alien soldiers with ruthless precision. Get to the core, she yelled. If they could destroy the ship from the inside, it would cripple the Zurak's offensive capabilities. The battle raged on, each moment more desperate than the last. At the outpost, Mira finally gave the all-clear. Starlight cannon ready. Marcus, now. Ethan ordered. With a final burst of speed, Marcus pushed the Silver Hawk into the flagship's bridge, crashing through the thick hull. The resulting explosion rocked the entire ship, sending it spiraling out of control. At that exact moment, the Starlight cannon fired, a blinding ray of light cutting through the flagship's defenses and striking its core. The ship erupted in a massive explosion, fragments scattering across the stars. The Zurak fleet faltered, their command system destroyed. Without leadership, the remaining ships retreated, their once unstoppable force now in shambles. In the aftermath, the Galactic Guard stood victorious, but at a heavy cost. The outpost was in ruins, and the team had suffered losses. Marcus had barely escaped with his life, ejecting from the Silver Hawk moments before the impact. As they stood together, watching the remnants of the Zurak fleet fade into the distance, Ethan spoke quietly. "We did it. The galaxy is safe, for now." Mira nodded, her eyes tired but determined. "But they'll be back." Ethan turned to his team, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. "Then we'll be ready." The story of the Galactic Guard would spread across the universe, their courage and sacrifice becoming legend. They had faced the impossible, and against all odds, they had won. Ethan stood at the observation deck, watching the last of the Zurak wreckage drift away into the void of space. The stars shimmered, indifferent to the chaos that had unfolded hours ago. The victory felt hollow despite their success. Too many lives had been lost, and the damage to the Galactic Guard's base was severe. Mira joined him, her arms crossed as she leaned against the railing. "It's not over, is it?" Ethan shook his head. "No. This was just the first wave. The Zurak are relentless. They'll regroup, and they'll come back stronger." Mira sighed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "The Starlight cannon worked, but it's not a permanent solution. We got lucky." "Luck or not, we survived," Ethan replied, his voice quiet. "That's more than most can say after facing the Zurak." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their roles pressing down on them. The Galactic Guard had always been a symbol of hope, a force of protection on the fringes of the galaxy. Now, with the Zurak threat becoming more tangible, their responsibilities felt even heavier. Behind them, the door hissed open, and Marcus limped in, still wearing the remnants of his flight suit. "You two having a moment?" he asked, a grin spreading across his face despite the pain in his eyes. His body had taken a beating after the crash, but his spirit seemed unbroken. Ethan smirked. "You're supposed to be in medbay." "I was. But they kicked me out when I started complaining about the food." Marcus hobbled over to join them at the railing, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Hell of a show out there. We really gave them something to remember." Mira gave him a sideways glance. "You almost didn't make it back." "Almost is good enough for me," Marcus replied, wincing as he shifted his weight. "Besides, I wasn't going to let some alien bastards ruin my day." Ethan chuckled softly, but his mind was already turning over the next steps. "We need to rebuild," he said, his tone growing serious again. "The outpost is barely holding together. We need reinforcements, more supplies, and we need to send a warning to the rest of the galaxy. Mira nodded. I'll start working on the repairs. The Starlight Cannon's energy core is depleted, but I think I can get it back online within a week. Marcus raised an eyebrow. A week? The Zurak won't wait that long. We'll have to make it work, Ethan said, turning to leave the deck. We've bought ourselves some time, but not much. Get some rest while you can. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding. The next day, the crew gathered in the war room, a stark contrast to the battle-hardened warriors they had been just hours ago. Now, they looked exhausted, their faces lined with fatigue, but their resolve remained intact. Ethan stood at the head of the table, a holographic display of the galaxy flickering before him. We've got two priorities, he began, addressing the team. First, we need to strengthen our defenses. The Zurak will come back, and we won't survive another attack if we're not ready. Second, we need to alert the other sectors. If the Zurak are moving on the galactic border, no one is safe. Mira tapped on the console, bringing up a schematic of the outpost. I can reinforce the shield generators, but we're running low on energy reserves. The Starlight Cannon drained a lot more than I anticipated. Can we reroute power from non-essential systems? Alana asked, her arms folded as she leaned against the wall. Mira nodded. It'll buy us some time, but it's not a long-term solution. We need a new energy source. We don't have time for that, Ethan said. Do what you can with what we've got. We need to be ready. Marcus chimed in, his voice more serious than usual. I'll get the fighter squadrons prepped. We'll need them in the air at all times, just in case the Zurak show up earlier than expected. Ethan gave him a nod of approval. Good. Everyone else, focus on repairs. We don't have the luxury of waiting for reinforcements. Days blurred into nights as the Galactic Guard worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. The sound of welding torches and the hum of machinery filled the air as teams worked around the clock to strengthen the outpost's defenses. Mira was a constant presence in the engineering bay, rarely leaving her station as she monitored the energy output and recalibrated the systems. Alana coordinated with ground teams, ensuring that every inch of the base was fortified. Marcus, true to his word, kept the fighter squadrons on high alert, running drills and simulations to keep his pilots sharp. Ethan barely slept, his mind racing with contingency plans. He knew they were running on borrowed time. The Zurak would return, and when they did, they wouldn't just be testing the waters. They'd come with everything they had. Late one evening, Ethan found himself back at the observation deck, staring out at the stars once more. The silence of space was deceptive, it hid the chaos and destruction that could erupt at any moment. He knew that out there, somewhere, the Zurak were preparing for their next move. You can't keep doing this, a voice said from behind him. Ethan turned to see Mira standing in the doorway, her arms crossed. She looked as tired as he felt, dark circles under her eyes, but there was a fire in her gaze. I'm fine, he replied, though they both knew it was a lie. Mira stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. You're pushing yourself too hard. We need you at your best when the Zurak return. Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. I can't afford to stop. There's too much at stake. I know, Mira said, her tone gentle. But we're a team, Ethan. You don't have to carry this burden alone. For a moment, the weight on his shoulders seemed to lessen, just slightly. He gave her a small nod, grateful for her presence, even if he couldn't find the words to say it. The days continued to pass, and soon the outpost began to resemble its former self. The shield generators were online, the fighter squadrons were ready, and the starlight cannon had been recharged. Though they all knew it was a one-shot gamble, Ethan stood before his crew, ready to give them the final briefing. "We've done everything we can. The Zurak will be here any day now. When they come, we hit them hard, and we hit them fast. We can't afford to let them gain any ground." The crew nodded in unison, their expressions grim but determined. They had been through hell once before, and they were ready to face it again. And then, the moment they had all been dreading arrived. "Captain," came a voice over the comms. "We've got movement on the scanners. It's them." Ethan felt his stomach drop, but he didn't let it show. "Everyone to battle stations." The Zurak fleet was even larger than before. Hundreds of ships filled the void, their dark hulls reflecting the distant stars. This wasn't a test. This was a full-scale invasion. Marcus was already in the air, leading the fighter squadrons as they engaged the enemy head-on. The Zurak ships were massive, their weapons lighting up the darkness as they fired at the outpost. The shield generators held, but only barely. "Get me a targeting lock on their flagship," Ethan ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "We're going to need the starlight cannon for this one." Mira worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. "I've got a lock, but it's not going to be easy. Their shields are stronger this time." "We don't have a choice," Ethan replied. "Fire when ready." The starlight cannon hummed to life, its energy core glowing as it charged. But just as it was about to fire, a Zurak cruiser broke through the defensive line, heading straight for the outpost. "We've got a problem," Alana said over the comms. "That cruiser's too close. If they breach the outpost, we're done." Ethan's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose the outpost, but they also couldn't miss their chance to take out the Zurak flagship. "Marcus, I need you to take out that cruiser," Ethan ordered. "On it, Cap," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the danger. As Marcus dove toward the cruiser, dodging enemy fire, the starlight cannon fired, its beam of light tearing through space. The Zurak flagship's shields flickered, then shattered, the blast tearing through its hull. The flagship exploded, the shockwave rippling through the Zurak fleet. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. And then, as if in unison, the remaining Zurak ships turned and fled, their formation broken. The battle was over. For now, Ethan stood in the aftermath, watching as the Zurak ships disappeared into the distance. The outpost was still standing, though just barely. The Galactic Guard had won, but at what cost? Mira approached him, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We did it." Ethan nodded, though his mind was already on the future. "Yeah. But they'll be back." "They always come back," Marcus said, limping toward them with a grin. "But so do we." Ethan allowed himself a small smile. They had survived, and for now, that was enough.